You're listening to something, or maybe you're not. Maybe it's just me. Talking into wires that go nowhere. Into silence that doesn't answer back. It's been, I don't know how long. Weeks? Months? I lost track after the clock stopped ticking and the sky turned pale. But I'm back on air. If you can call this air. The transmitter held up barely. Had to dig it out from the frozen floor like a coffin. I've rigged enough power for one more night, maybe two, if the batteries don't give up. If I don't. If you're out there, if this reaches beyond the frostbite and the snow static, I just want you to know someone's still speaking, even if no one's left to hear it. I used to sit here with weather reports, community bulletins, jazz on Thursdays, but now there's no music, no weather worth predicting, just cold, endless cold. I'm not trying to give hope. Hope died a long time ago, somewhere between the third emergency alert and the silence that followed it. No, this isn't about hope. This is about remembering. Because if this is all going to vanish, I want someone, somewhere, someday, to know that it once existed. I don't have a script, just memories, questions, and the kind of loneliness that echoes in your teeth. So I'll talk until the batteries die. Or I do. Welcome back to The Signal. Such as it is, you're listening to the last voice on a dead frequency. I remember the exact moment it started. I was sitting by the window with a cup of coffee watching the street. It was late afternoon, early spring, the kind of light that makes everything look clean, like the world's just been scrubbed down. And then the light changed. Not suddenly, slowly, like someone was dimming the switch on the sun. At first I thought it was cloud cover, one of those strange northern storms that roll in like fog and vanish just as fast. But it kept going. The sunlight faded from white to gray, then to a deep, icy blue. The shadows got longer, colder. People noticed, of course. Neighbors came outside. Some took photos. Others just stood still, their faces turned up like flowers that couldn't find the sun. The temperature dropped. Fast, unnatural, fast. You could see your breath within minutes. I remember birds dropping from the sky. No warning. Just silent thumps against the street and rooftops, like the world forgot how to fly. I thought, no, we all thought, it was temporary, a fluke, a strange celestial hiccup. Scientists gave press statements, half smiles and hollow reassurances. It's a brief solar dip, a temporary anomaly, nothing to panic about. But the panic had already started. The blue light never went away, not fully. Daylight turned into something thin and watery, like a flashlight running out of batteries. And still, no one really believed it. People kept going to work, stores stayed open, radios played ads, as if pretending hard enough would push the sun back into place. But pretending didn't work. It never does. And by the end of that first week, we weren't looking up anymore. Now, there's only static. Every night I turn the dial, band to band, frequency to frequency, AM, FM, long wave, short wave, nothing but the hiss of emptiness. But sometimes, in the middle of all that static, something slips through. A whisper, a burst of music cut off too soon, a cough, a number repeated over and over. Morse code, maybe, or prayer. There's no pattern, no language I can decipher. Just fragments, like broken teeth in a frozen jaw. A few nights ago, I caught something that made my skin lock up, like frost across bone. It was a man's voice, very faint, repeating the same sentence, "Don't let it in," over and over, like a loop on a dying machine. And then, silence again. I keep listening, even when I tell myself to stop. The wind outside mimics voices sometimes. You hear them calling your name, laughing, begging. Sometimes I think it's just my own thoughts bouncing off the frost. Other times, I don't know. The old emergency broadcast system still chirps sometimes. That same tone, like a warning from the past. But there's no message that follows it now. just the tone. Like the machine forgot what it was supposed to say. I wonder if other people are doing this too, sitting alone in their dead towns, whispering into radios that may never be heard. And if they are, do they hear me? Maybe we're all just echoes now, fragments bouncing through frozen air, not living, not dead, just waiting. If you're out there, scanning the bands, know that this frequency remembers you. I need to say this clearly. This isn't news. This isn't survival tips or evacuation, instructions, or calls for help. Those came and went, and none of them saved us. None of them meant anything. This is something else. This is a record, not a broadcast, a memory, one final thread in the unraveling fabric of the world. Maybe you're human. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're standing on what used to be Earth, or orbiting its ashes, or scanning some cold digital archive left behind in a cave of wires. Whatever you are, this voice, right now, was once alive and scared and still speaking. Because silence is worse. I've forgotten what I look like. I've stopped talking out loud when the mic is off. Sometimes I sleep with the transmitter running, just so I feel like something's listening. I don't want to disappear quietly. None of us did. So, if you're hearing this, I'm asking only one thing. Remember us. Not as survivors, not as victims, but as people who once laughed in the sunlight, who danced, who fought, who feared, who loved. The cold can take the cities, the wires, the skies. But if one signal survives, then so do we. I don't know how long I can keep this up. The battery's blinking now, and my breath's starting to fog the mic again. But I'll be here tomorrow. Same time, same voice, same ghost in the machine. Because even if this isn't a broadcast, it's still a voice. And voices matter. There wasn't a warning, no sirens, no headlines. Just a wind, a strange kind of wind. Too cold for the season, too still to trust. It moved through the town like a breath held too long, curling around rooftops, threading through alleys, and then slipping beneath the skin. I remember standing at my back door, holding a cup of water that froze solid before I could take a sip. At first, we joked. Guess winter's back for revenge, someone said on the old community bulletin board. Ice Age 2.0, another laughed. Hashtags were born, memes were shared. Cold isn't scary, not until it starts thinking. The lakes froze within a day. I don't mean the surface, everything. Fish locked in place halfway through a swim. The trees began to crack like bones under weight they couldn't carry. And the sky. That sky! It turned a color I still can't name. A kind of blue that didn't belong here. Like something foreign had peeled back the normal and hung its own sky over ours. Then the birds dropped. Hundreds of them. Silent. Like someone had flipped a switch inside them. They didn't fall with sound, just fell. Gravity without grace. That was the moment people stopped laughing. Cars were abandoned, schools closed. You could see breath inside the house, even with the heat cranked to max. The cold wasn't outside anymore. It was in. It had passed through walls, windows, clothing. It moved like thought, and no one understood why. No polar vortex, no Arctic blast. Just a sudden, intelligent kind of winter. You could feel it in your lungs, the way each breath carried something extra. Like you weren't breathing air, but memory. Like the world was exhaling something long, buried, and still, no answers. I used to trust the experts. I listened to them like scripture, meteorologists, climate specialists, professors in half-lit lecture halls explaining cold fronts and atmospheric shifts. Their voices made the world feel manageable, predictable, but not this time. The models failed, not glitched, collapsed. Forecasts contradicted themselves by the hour. First, they said it was regional, then global, then something else entirely. I kept tuning into the weather networks, looking for calm voices, clean data. What I got instead were fragmented transmissions, panic behind forced smiles, technical difficulties they couldn't quite explain, I remember one broadcast where the meteorologist stopped mid-sentence. She looked off camera, eyes wide, lips trembling, and then the feed cut. Just like that, I never saw her again. Within days, the confident tones were replaced by loops. Please stand by. We are experiencing a temporary disruption. Over and over, empty promises from systems that had lost control. One scientist, an old solar physicist from Denmark, gave a brief interview before his line disconnected. He said something that never left me. The sun is still burning, but something's standing in front of it. That phrase, I wrote it down, stared at it for hours. What could possibly stand in front of the sun? People started making up their own theories. A second moon, a dust cloud, a government cover-up, a spiritual reckoning, but all we really had was silence. And it wasn't just the scientists who went quiet. It was the satellites, the sensors, the infrastructure, like the tools we built to understand the universe were going blind, or being made blind. One by one, the voices we relied on stopped speaking, and I kept listening, kept recording, because when the voices you trust disappear, you start wondering if they were taken. After the scientists fell silent, I turned to the news. That was the next to go. At first, the anchors did what anchors always do. Smile through the panic, read their scripts like everything was under control. Unusual climate behavior, they called it. An extended solar minimum. A slight dip, a blip. A nothing to worry about, except their voices didn't match their words. I remember one broadcast, Channel 9, late at night. The anchor's face was pale, lips trembling ever so slightly. She read the teleprompter, paused, blinked, and then whispered, almost off mic, "This isn't natural." And the screen cut to black. I never saw her again. Other networks followed the same pattern. First, the tone changed. Nervous laughs, rushed transitions. Then came the interruptions, feeds dropping mid-sentence, technical errors that never got fixed. One station cut to commercials and never came back. Eventually, even the commercials stopped. Some of the last transmissions were desperate. A male anchor from an international station in Buenos Aires shouted into the mic, "We're freezing inside the studio!" Before the audio broke apart in a burst of static, another reporter, in Moscow maybe, started crying on air, just sat there and wept while the camera kept rolling. And then, nothing, just frozen frames. Static. Dead air. What's worse than panic is watching professionals trained to manage panic fall apart in real time. Because when they lose it, when the people meant to explain, guide, reassure, when they unravel, you know there's no plan. No one's coming. I kept every recording I could, played them back like some kind of ritual, hoping to catch something I missed, some detail, some clue. But it was all just noise. Fear in formal wear, voices folding into silence. And the silence didn't stop there. It wasn't just local. It wasn't even just national. Entire countries vanished from the air. One by one, international signals disappeared. Japan, Germany, South Africa, Australia, gone. Not just broadcasts, everything. No news, no distress calls, no static hums. It was like they'd been erased. Some regions looped emergency tones for days, short rhythmic beeps, followed by dead silence. One government channel repeated the same phrase in multiple languages. Shelter. Remain calm. Do not look directly at the sun. What sun? We hadn't seen it in weeks. I tried reaching ham radio operators, the survivalist forums, the underground networks. Nothing. I kept cycling through frequencies, listening for any familiar voice. There were none. Only feedback, mechanical pulses, or ghostly traces of transmissions, long since expired. And then something happened that broke me. I realized I hadn't seen a sunrise in over a month. Not a cloudy sunrise, not dimmed light. I mean, none. Just a constant gray dome, darker each day. A twilight that kept dimming. The sky was still there, sure, but the sun, the thing we built our clocks, our calendars, our existence around was missing. Some said it was obscured. Others said it was dying. I even heard one theory, whispered through static, that we were no longer on the same side of it. That something had shifted, tilted, turned, blocked. That we were now orbiting absence. People stopped going outside. Plants withered. Animals vanished. Time dissolved. And the worst part? No one even screamed anymore. Because screaming means you think someone can hear you. But this felt deliberate. I don't know what could make the entire planet fall silent. I don't know what could pull the sun from the sky without fire or war. But I do know this. Something decided we didn't need to see it anymore. After the broadcast died, I stopped sleeping. Nights became a ritual. Sitting in the dark with the radio, slowly turning the dial like I was winding time itself. Just listening, hoping, dreading. Most of the bands are dead. Not just quiet, dead. There's a difference. Silence has weight, but dead air is hollow. It doesn't even echo. And yet, sometimes, through the static, something pulses. Faint, a tone, a whisper, a burst of something. It never stays long. Just a flicker. Enough to make me question if I imagined it. I keep notes, frequencies, timestamps, signal strength, a logbook for ghosts. Maybe I think if I map the chaos, I'll find a pattern. Or maybe I just want to believe the world didn't end completely. There's one frequency I come back to more than the others. 88.7. It doesn't play music, doesn't speak, but every night, for 5 seconds, it hums. A low, vibrating tone that makes my teeth ache. I don't know where it's coming from. I've tried triangulating the signal, but it shifts. Like it's moving. Or hiding. I've heard clicking too, not Morse code. Not anything mechanical. Organic maybe. Like bone tapping on bone. Sometimes I think I hear breathing. Not mine. I tell myself it's interference. A trick of atmosphere and failing equipment. But then I remember. There is no atmosphere anymore. Not really. Not the way it used to be. I ask myself, why am I still searching? Maybe because voices mean presence. Presence means people. And people mean I'm not alone. But every time I turn that dial, I wonder, what if the voice I find isn't human? They don't talk like we used to. The ones still broadcasting, if you can call it that, don't follow structure, no greetings, no call signs, just fragments. As if their minds fractured under the cold and kept looping the broken pieces. I've recorded dozens, labeled them by tone, duration, frequency. Some last seconds, others go on for hours, and every one of them feels like a message from the edge of sanity. There's one that plays a woman's voice whispering, "He's still under the ice, he's still under the ice," over and over for 7 minutes straight, before cutting into static so loud I thought the speakers would rupture. Another sounds like a prayer, but it's in no language I recognize. The cadence is ancient, like something meant to be spoken in catacombs, not through radio waves. One transmission plays only laughter, childlike, hollow, sped up, slowed down, sometimes layered with sobbing underneath, as if it's mocking grief in real time. I found a file labeled Transmission 3A in my notes, just a man repeating numbers in random sequences. No rhythm, no logic. But when I played it backward, the numbers spelled out latitude and longitude, an exact location in the middle of a frozen sea. I haven't dared tune in again. Not all the messages feel insane. Some are soft, desperate. I have one where someone just says, "Is anyone out there?" Again and again, each time quieter, like they're fading with every loop, or giving up. Some of the voices I think I recognize. Some sound like people I lost. I try to remind myself that it's not possible. That memory plays tricks when paired with grief and static. But deep down, part of me wonders, what if the signals aren't just broadcasts? What if they're memories, trapped and repeating? Or worse, what if they're invitations? There's a sound I've come to dread more than silence. It happens every night, without fail, at exactly 3:33 a.m., not 3:32, not 3:34. I've checked. I've recorded. I've timed it to the millisecond. It begins with a soft click, like a switch being flipped in the dark. Then the static thins, clears just enough to let a voice slip through. A child's voice, young, maybe 6, maybe 7, genderless, emotionless. It speaks numbers, sequences, the same ones, every night. 4, 1, 0, 7, 8, 9, pause, 6, 6, 6, pause. Then the loop resets. It's not counting, it's not asking, it's delivering. I've played it in reverse. I've translated it into binary, Morse, Latin, spectrograms. I even tried running it through voice analysis software to find a match. Nothing. No known source. No vocal signature. Just that same detached voice. There's no modulation. No background noise. It doesn't breathe. It just speaks. And it's only on my radio. I've asked other survivors, when I could find them, if they've heard it. They look at me like I've gone too long without sleep, like I'm cracking open. But I know I'm not hallucinating. I've saved recordings, labeled the tapes, dated them, listened over and over, hoping to catch a stutter, a deviation, anything. But the numbers never change. I don't know what they mean. Coordinates? A countdown? A message from something watching us? Or maybe from something inside us? Last night, I whispered back, just once. I said, "Why are you saying this?" No answer, not right away. But after the final sequence, there was a pause, longer than usual, and then a breath, a child's breath, like someone had just leaned close to the mic and was waiting for me to speak again. It happened last night. Something changed. I'd been drifting in and out, half awake, half gone, radio on low, barely registering the usual blur of static and soft broken messages. I wasn't expecting anything new, just more of the same whispers and loops and number stations that haunted my nights, like lullabies for the already dead. Then the static shifted. It wasn't louder, just different, like it had shape. A rhythm that wasn't random anymore, almost like breathing. And then came the voice. Not the child this time. Not numbers. Not chanting or looping sobs or nonsense syllables. It was a man. Calm. Measured, but not warm. He spoke one word. My name. Not a distortion. Not a coincidence. Not something that sounded like my name. He said it clearly. The way someone says it when they know you. The way someone says it when they've said it before. I froze, let the mic fall, sat there, staring at the radio like it had grown eyes. Then he said it again, and this time he added, "I've been listening." I didn't respond. Couldn't. My mouth wouldn't work. My thoughts jammed up like ice in an old pipe. How? Who? From where? I waited for more, but nothing came. Just a long, slow fade back into static. I replayed it a dozen times. My name. The sentence. I've been listening, and there's something in the way he said it that I can't shake. Not a threat, not comfort either, just observation. I don't know what this is anymore. I don't know who's out there or what out there even means now. But I do know this. If the voices on these frequencies have started listening, it means they've stopped repeating. And if they're listening, then maybe they're not alone either. Maybe something else is with them. You would think the government had a plan. That's what we believed anyway. In those first few days, maybe the first week, we still held on to that idea. That someone, somewhere, was in control. That the top brass, the ones behind the glass walls and coated doors, had contingency protocols, briefcases with red buttons, underground cities, cold weather scenarios prepped in dusty binders. They did respond at first. They tried. I remember the waves of alerts that hit everyone's phones, text messages stacked on top of each other like a glitching feed. Shelter in place. Evacuate major urban centers. Remain indoors. Report to the nearest emergency coordination zone. One message contradicted the next. No one knew which one to follow. You'd turn on one channel and hear that the president was calling for calm. Flip to another and you'd hear a military general ordering mass mobilization. Then, an agency spokesperson insisting there was no cause for alarm, while the screen behind her showed satellite images of the entire eastern seaboard under ice. Press conferences were held daily, then twice a day, then streamed around the clock. You could see the cracks forming in their voices, eyes darting off camera, suits that looked like they hadn't been changed in days. At some point, they stopped answering questions. I remember one particularly surreal moment. An official from the Department of Energy was asked whether the sun's reduced light was affecting national power grids. He blinked twice, looked down at his notes, and said, "We're still assessing whether the sun has actually changed." That was the moment I knew they were lying. Or worse, they had no idea. There were rumors about secret bunkers, off-grid facilities, last-ditch continuity plans, but those were just whispers. People who went looking for those places didn't come back. Maybe they found something. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they were found first. And then, just like that, the faces stopped appearing. It started with the White House live stream freezing mid-sentence. One moment, a tired press secretary was insisting that all resources are being coordinated in real time. The next, the feed locked. Her mouth half open, eyes off center, no glitch, no buffering, just still. And then nothing, no follow-up, no explanation, no scheduled broadcast. DC was quiet. News helicopters stopped flying over the Capitol. Traffic cams froze. Government hotlines went from overburdened to disconnected. Websites stopped updating. Their timestamps became fossils, frozen in place. People still waited in front of their TVs, still tuned in to the emergency radio band, hoping to hear a voice, any voice. Instead, they got the looping tone again, just a sterile signal pulsing at even intervals. And then, after a few days, not even that. It was like someone had walked through the halls of power and turned off every light, every terminal, every mic, and walked away without locking the door. Rumors flooded the vacuum. Some said DC had been fully evacuated. Others said it was quarantined. I heard someone claim the entire Capitol had sunk, swallowed by ice or silence or something even stranger. But no one knew. And those who claimed to know spoke in riddles. There were whispers that military units were no longer taking orders from civilian leadership, that generals were holding closed-door meetings in places with no cell towers, that there was a protocol, something ancient, something off the books for when the sun went dark. Some people said the government didn't vanish. They said it was absorbed, rewritten. That's when the word threshold started appearing in intercepted chatter. I don't know what it means, but it was always said the same way. Flat, controlled, like someone had rehearsed it 1,000 times too many. Threshold. Like we passed through something. And whoever was on the other side decided we weren't worth speaking to anymore. There's a tape. I don't know if it's real. I don't know if anything is anymore. But I have it. It came from someone who called himself a displaced technician, claimed he was working in an underground satellite relay hub, deep-level clearance off books. He didn't give his name. Just coordinates, encrypted. I had to decode them manually using a cipher I thought I'd forgotten. The file was small, compressed, audio only, titled WHTFINALDOT. The voice is garbled, layered with distortion, like it's passing through water. But I know what I'm hearing. It's a presidential address. Or at least it was meant to be. You can hear the weight in the voice, the kind of gravity that only exists when the script is gone and someone realizes they're speaking to no one. There's breathing, hesitation, then words. This will be the last official message transmitted from this office. The voice pauses, a shuffle of paper, a crackle of static. We believed we could control it. We didn't understand what we were inviting. We thought the barrier would hold. Barrier, he goes on, talks about models that failed, about particles behaving wrong, about internal collapse, not of the country, but of laws, natural laws. Time is behaving inconsistently. Light no longer responds as it should. Our instruments are lying to us, or something is lying through them. There's a sound, distant, sharp, not human, and then we were wrong. Then silence, not a cut, not an ending, just a long, creeping fade into an absence so total I didn't realize the tape had stopped until my own breath startled me. I don't know if that was the real president, but I know one thing. You don't scramble a message that carefully if you don't expect someone or something else to be listening too. They kept broadcasting longer than anyone else. The military, I mean. While the politicians vanished and the scientists went mute, the armed forces clung to their structure like it was the only thing keeping the world from tipping over. You'd tune into secure bands and hear those clipped voices, calm, calculated, issuing movement orders, security lockdowns, quarantine updates. It was comforting, in a way. Cold comfort, but comfort nonetheless. Then it changed. Not all at once, slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, a slight tremor in the voice, an extra breath before issuing a command. Hesitation where there hadn't been any before. Then came the shifts in terminology. Words like unknown vector started replacing weather anomaly. Containment breach started replacing public unrest. And then the phrase that stopped me cold the first time I heard it, non-terrestrial signature. They didn't explain it, just used it like it was already understood. Reports grew erratic. Coordinates were read off without context. Orders were issued, then retracted. Entire battalions were redirected to zones marked only as Event Radius A. Then came the phrase that still shows up now and then, Category Echo. Echo! It appears in reports, followed by long silences. Echo in Sector 4. Echo is mobile. Echo confirmed visual. No one ever explains what echo is. I once caught a brief exchange. Two voices, panicked, unfiltered. It's not staying in the ground. It's not responding to targeting. Then the feed cut. No channel ID, just gone. The soldiers used to sound like machines. Now they sound like men who've seen too much. You can hear it in their words, like they're reading scripts written by someone who doesn't believe them anymore. You can feel it. The weight of obedience cracking under the pressure of something that doesn't care about protocol, something they may have tried to stop, something they may have woken up. You learn a lot about the human mind when you're left alone with it too long. I've started collecting things, fragments mostly, letters, audio files, journal entries. I don't know who wrote most of them. Some were found shoved into mailboxes, others scrawled on food wrappers or etched into ice-frosted windows. A few came through dead channels, voice notes that looped once and never returned. They weren't meant to be read, not by strangers, maybe not by anyone, but I read them anyway. There's one from a man who wrote a list every morning. Just names, hundreds of them. He'd read the names aloud as if keeping them in the air would keep them alive. The last page I found had a single name, repeated dozens of times, then a final line. I can't remember who this is anymore. Another letter was just a single word, written over and over again. Wait, the last few lines looked frantic, desperate, like whoever was writing it realized no one was coming. There's a woman's recording I keep replaying. Not because it comforts me, but because it disturbs me so precisely. Her voice is gentle, soft, like she's tucking a child into bed. She keeps saying, "Don't listen to the wind, baby. It lies." She says it 8 times, then whispers something I still can't decipher. What gets me most isn't the madness. It's the structure of it. These aren't random breakdowns. They're organized. Like minds aren't just failing. They're redirecting adapting to something unnatural, something the cold is whispering. I used to think loneliness broke people. Now, I think it reveals them. And maybe whatever's inside this ice isn't just freezing bodies. Maybe it's listening, learning, pushing us where it wants us to go. Or maybe isolation just strips the paint off the soul. And we're all writing our own letters now. Her name was Dela. I never met her. Just heard her voice on a looped message found buried under corrupted files. She must have been in her late 70s. You can hear it in the rasp. But her tone, it's not weak. It's firm. Intentional. Like she knew exactly what she was saying. She starts with her name. My name is Dela Marquis. I was born in 1949. I am not afraid. Over and over, she says it like a ritual. Then she starts talking about vibrations. Not sound, not weather, vibrations. She says the ice hums at night. Says if you sit still enough, if you breathe quietly, you can feel it moving beneath your skin. Not loud, not angry, just present, watching. At first, I thought it was dementia, a hallucination drawn up by extreme cold and isolation. But then she says something that made the hair on my arms rise. It only hums when I'm awake. When I sleep, it stops. She insists the cold is intelligent. Not in a human way, not even in an animal way, but aware. Purposeful, like it's waiting for something. Or choosing. She talks about her window being covered in frost every morning. Not unusual in this world, but she claims the patterns in the frost started to form shapes. Symbols she didn't recognize. One of them, she says, looked like an eye, another like a spiral, and every morning it changed. Dela didn't panic. That's what chilled me. She accepted it. The ice isn't cruel, she said, just curious. Like it's trying to speak in a language we haven't evolved to understand yet. Her last words before the file cuts are barely audible. I think it knows my name now. I've replayed that sentence 100 times. Not because of what she said, but because it sounded exactly like something I would say. The next message came from a man who identified himself only as Pastor Elijah. It was a voice recording, scratchy, uneven, recorded over what sounded like a repurposed emergency broadcast line. I almost deleted it, but something in his tone stopped me. At first, he's calm, composed, speaking with that steady cadence only true believers seem to master. This isn't climate. This isn't punishment from the earth. It's not science at all. This is judgment. He says it like he's explaining the weather forecast. Elijah talks about the sun not vanishing, but withdrawing, not by force, but by choice. The light turned away from us, he says, because we turned away first. He describes the cold as divine silence, says the absence of warmth is the absence of grace, that we weren't cast into the cold, we walked into it, it gets darker. He starts quoting scripture, but the verses are warped, reassembled, familiar but wrong. Pieces from Revelation mixed with apocryphal texts, prophecies I don't recognize. He keeps coming back to the same phrase. The heat of mercy was lifted, and what followed was clarity. Then his voice cracks. He starts weeping, but he doesn't stop talking, just sobs through the words, a stream of grief, rage, and awe. And then, just before the tape cuts, he screams, "It's still watching us from behind the sky." I've played that moment back dozens of times, not for the scream itself, but for what follows it. There's a moment right before the tape ends where the silence shifts, not static, not noise, something else, like a breath, long, measured, and it doesn't belong to him. I read one more message, just one. It was typed, clean, almost too clean. No typos, no grammatical errors, as if someone or something ran it through filters 1,000 times to perfect it. No name, no timestamp, just a subject line. For you, It didn't start like the others. No greeting, no backstory, just one question. Have you begun hearing it yet? At first I thought it was referring to the other voices, the transmissions, the child at 333, the preacher's loop. But then I kept reading. It doesn't live in the airwaves, it rides them. It uses signal like skin. It listens, it adjusts, and eventually it speaks. Not in language, not to the ear, but directly. As I read it aloud, something happened. The static in the room changed. Not louder, just present. Like it had taken a breath with me. Like I wasn't just reading the message. I was receiving it. I felt a thought not mine slip across my mind like frost on glass. It didn't say anything. Just pressed there, as if testing the shape of me. I stopped reading, but the words kept going in my head. As if I already knew the rest. As if they'd been waiting. I burned the paper. Didn't matter. I still know every word. I still feel the shape of that presence when I sit at this mic. Like it's watching me through the hum, or listening through me. I'm not sure anymore. The message ended with one line. You are not decoding the transmissions. You are the transmission. I haven't read anything since. I just talk now. Because maybe that's what it wants. Or maybe that's what I've become. There was a time I trusted the scientists more than anyone. When the cold first rolled in, when the skies dimmed and people whispered about the end, I turned to the experts. Not the politicians, not the prophets, the scientists. Men and women who spoke in equations, not parables, who didn't blink when chaos knocked on the door, but even they fell apart. I have archived clips, interviews, press briefings, weather reports from solar physicists, climate researchers, systems analysts. At first, they were steady, calculated, offering models, predictions, forecasts, assuring us that this, whatever this was, had a precedent, even if it wasn't familiar. Then the models broke, and so did their voices. There's a clip of Dr. Ahmed Al-Karim, atmospheric researcher. Early on, he calmly explained sudden polar expansion due to jet stream disruption. 3 days later, in a follow-up, he's pale, sweat-streaked, whispering that the jet stream isn't real anymore. That clip was pulled within hours. Another one. Dr. Lena Burrows, solar physicist. Her final public statement was a warning. We're seeing light bend in ways it shouldn't. It's not a solar dip. It's a spatial anomaly, a curtain. She never appeared again. Their language changed, too, became vague, almost poetic. One physicist described the cold as an intelligent inversion. Another spoke of recursive decay. One simply said, the sky is lying to us. And then, one by one, they vanished. No resignations, no official statements, no obituaries. Just gaps where once there were answers. I started to think maybe they weren't silenced. Maybe they stopped talking because they realized the truth wasn't something you could say out loud and stay sane. Or maybe they didn't go silent at all. Maybe they're still speaking, just not to us anymore. A few weeks after the last broadcast from NOAA, something surfaced. A leak. It came from someone deep inside. Anonymous, of course. Digital fingerprints wiped clean. The metadata scrubbed down to static. But what they released wasn't speculation. It wasn't theory. It was protocol. 47 pages. Redacted, incomplete, labeled Operation Hiburnus. No one in power acknowledged it, not directly. But they didn't deny it either. That silence said more than any press conference ever could. The file reads like a manual for emergency response, but not to a war or a virus or a natural disaster. It outlines procedures for global thermal dampening events, photonic disruption scenarios, and localized solar filtration frameworks. It talks about sunlight neutralization, According to the document, Hiburnus was initiated as a climate control experiment, a last resort plan to reflect excess heat using high altitude particulates and synchronized orbital arrays. Sounded simple enough on paper, but the timestamps don't match. Hiburnus was signed into covert deployment 2 years before the temperature dropped, before the sun dimmed, before the birds fell. One line still echoes in my head. In the event of unanticipated amplification or secondary resonance, disengage atmospheric veil manually through layer 4. Except there is no layer 4. Multiple scientists quoted in the file flagged it as theoretical only, a failsafe they never finished building. In short, they turned the sky into a switch, and when they flipped it, they had no way to turn it back. There's speculation, of course, that Hiburnus was tampered with, hijacked, or worse, intercepted. That what was meant to be a net became a beacon. Something about the language in the final pages. There's panic there. Disjointed updates, system alerts bleeding into command logs. One line is repeated 3 times. Unformatted. We should not have synchronized the field. I've read that phrase over and over, and each time I feel colder than the last. After the Hiburnus file leaked, the theories multiplied like frost fractals across a window. Some were familiar. Geoengineering gone wrong. Secret space mirrors, high-altitude dust clouds meant to reflect sunlight and stall global warming. You've probably heard those before. Clean, academic, almost reasonable. But even the reasonable ones had cracks, because none of them accounted for the color of the sky, the sound the cold makes, the way light behaves now, slower, more hesitant, like it's passing through something alive. One theory blames a classified solar shield, a massive orbital structure built in pieces and assembled in silence, designed to deflect radiation, cool the Earth, control the ecosystem. But something went wrong, or someone changed the programming, shifted the orbit. A calculated dimming turned total. Another theory claims it was sabotage, that foreign powers hijacked atmospheric control systems and triggered a chain reaction. An artificial winter meant to destabilize economies, collapse communication, break nations without dropping a single bomb. But those theories, they assume intent. And the truth might be stranger. There's a theory I keep coming back to. Quiet. Fringe. Written by a physicist no one talks about anymore. Dr. Tamara Yeo. She said the sun didn't dim. We did. Her paper was titled Obstruction Field Hypothesis, Quantum Refractive Collapse of Observational Light. A mouthful, I know. But the idea was this. Something is interfering, not with the sun, but with our ability to see it. A lens, a veil, a field, something placed between us and the light. Not by orbit, not by atmosphere, but by force we don't yet understand. She called it selective cosmic occlusion, as if reality itself was being filtered. For us, and us alone. She disappeared 3 weeks after publishing. No retraction, no follow-up. Just gone. Sometimes I wonder if that paper wasn't a theory, but a warning. I found a report, not through the usual leaks. This one came in pieces, scraps embedded in corrupted archives, buried under layers of broken code. Took me days to assemble, still missing large chunks, but enough remains to make the skin crawl. It was labeled CETRX/final transmission. No author, no timestamp, no agency identifier, just text, clinical, dispassionate, the way only scientific writing can be. It starts with observation logs, temperature shifts, light behavior, deviations in electromagnetic fields. Then the language changes. Suddenly, the text becomes less certain, more abstract. Observations become questions, then warnings. Subjective time. Distortion is now measurable across multiple population clusters. Phase noise detected in light spectrum. Sleep irregularities noted across observers exposed to open sky. It mentions dreams, shared symbols, a rise in non-local thought transmission. And then it says something that makes my stomach twist. Signal may not be detected because signal may be observer. I read that line 5 times. I still don't understand it. Not fully. But I feel it, like something brushing against the edge of thought. Like the report wasn't describing the phenomenon. It was succumbing to it. Toward the end, the sentences fragment. Syntax collapses. Words repeat. Almost like the writer wasn't in control anymore. Like the act of documenting became contamination. Then at the bottom, scrawled like an afterthought, just one final line. Unformatted, not part of any structure. They're still listening. No signature, no summary, no conclusion. Just that. I turned off my transmitter that night. Sat in total silence. Not because I was afraid of being heard, but because I was afraid of what else might answer. And since then, sometimes I think I'm not reading reports. I think I'm remembering them. You'd think, in a world starved of light, people would crave facts. But when the light disappeared, so did the logic. The scientists stopped speaking. The broadcasts fractured. And into that silence stepped others. Voices not trained but anointed. Or so they claimed. They began as whispers. YouTube uploads, encrypted podcasts, handwritten pamphlets left at frozen shelters. Then came the gatherings. People walking in lines, wrapped in plastic and burlap, heading north, always north, toward the cold, like it was a temple. Some wore blindfolds, others painted symbols on their faces. I saw a woman carve concentric circles into her arms and mutter, "The spiral opens when the sun forgets." They called themselves things like the thermoclasts and the veil bearers. There's one group, I've picked them up on multiple bands, who refer to themselves simply as the remembered cold. They don't preach salvation, not like old religion. They speak of stillness, of surrender, of waiting in the frost long enough for the ice to speak back. One group believes that when the last voice stops transmitting, a gate will open beneath the polar cap. Another believes that humanity was never meant to witness the full light of the sun, and that the dimming was a divine correction. I used to laugh at these things. Now I just listen. Because I've started hearing some of the same words in my dreams. And I haven't prayed in years. There's a preacher I keep picking up on shortwave. His voice is thick. Southern. Ragged like torn cloth. He doesn't read scripture, not anymore. He just repeats things the ice tells him. That's what he says anyway. He talks about frost patterns forming angelic alphabets, about dreams where the sky peels back to reveal teeth. He claims every gust of wind is a breath from something ancient, asleep in the marrow of glaciers. I saved one of his recordings. In it, he says, "The ice is the last prophet. It remembers before memory. And now it's remembering us." He claims the dying speak in tongues, not from delirium but possession, that the final shivers of the human body are translations of the cold's gospel. He calls them the last sermons. Then, without warning, he starts weeping, not out of fear, out of awe. "It's not punishing us," he says. "It's welcoming us. We were always meant to return." He doesn't say where we're returning to. But his voice never sounds more sure than when he says that word, return. There's a new frequency. I found it by accident, just left the dial drifting while I boiled water, and suddenly there it was. Faint at first, but unmistakable. A chant. It didn't sound human at first. Too slow, too stretched, like monks underwater. But the cadence, it pulled me in. A rhythm like breathing and mourning wrapped into one. I recorded it, ran it through audio software. No language detected. No match in the global linguistic archives. But the waveform, it isn't random. It's patterned, precise. Every 37 seconds, the entire transmission resets. Exactly, as if scripted. At first, I thought it was synthetic. Maybe AI generated, some doomsday artifact on a loop. But then, It changed. One night, I tuned in, and the chant paused, only for a second, then resumed, as if it had noticed me. I've sent the recording to other survivors. Some say it makes them calm. Others say it makes them dream of ice melting in reverse. One man swears he woke up with frost on his eyelashes, indoors, no open windows, and still, no source. The signal strength doesn't align with any known transmitter. No Doppler effect, no distance decay. It's like it comes from everywhere at once. Some of the cults believe it's a divine frequency. They kneel before radios. They hum along. They call it the breath of God's shadow. All I know is, when I don't listen to it, I feel something waiting, like a prayer I've forgotten the words to, but still owe. There's a channel I don't share. Not with anyone. I found it buried beneath a broken maritime band. Low frequency, barely a whisper. You wouldn't know it was there unless you were looking for something else. It doesn't transmit sound. It transmits presence. A low hum, almost mechanical, but organic in the way it pulses, like breathing through stone, the kind of sound you feel in your teeth before you hear it in your ears. It only plays at certain hours, late, between 4:10 and 4:23 a.m. Then it vanishes. The signal triangulates to a region deep beneath the frozen trench near the Norwegian Sea, an area known for seismic silence. No tectonic movement, no sonar returns, nothing until now. One night the signal spoke, not in words, not in tones, just a shift in the frequency that made every part of me go still. And in that moment, I didn't feel like I was listening to the signal. I felt like it was listening through me. I still have it playing, low, beneath everything I say. You probably can't hear it, but I think it hears you. I've stopped asking what the cold is. Now I'm asking who. It's just a theory, an idea that's too absurd to publish, too horrifying to dismiss. But I've run the data, reviewed the anomalies, listened to every loop in silence and shift in frequency. And something changes when we act, not when we breathe or move, but when we decide. Every spike in frost growth, every distortion in signal strength, every low frequency pulse I've mapped, it correlates to human behavior, not weather, not entropy, United States. The more we transmit, the more it listens. The more we doubt, the more it adapts. The more we believe in anything, the more it responds. It's not random. It's not environmental. It's observational. We assumed the cold was a condition, a side effect, the aftermath of a mistake. But what if it's not passive? What if the frost on your window isn't weather, but attention? What if every time you speak into the static, something hears you and learns? I can't shake this feeling anymore that I'm not watching the world freeze. The world is watching me watch it, and it's waiting to see what I'll do next. There's something happening to the towers, not all of them, just the ones still standing, the ones we've used the most. Repeated signals, heavy transmission loads. They're growing structures, not ice, not snow. Something different, more geometric. Crystal formations, yes, but not random, not natural. They spiral, they arc. They form impossible lattices across steel and plastic and broken ceramic like they're tuning to something. At first I thought it was a byproduct of temperature, but they don't form on the ground, only high up, only on signal hubs. And when you try to remove them, they sing, not melodically, just frequency, a hum, barely audible, that changes pitch as you approach, like feedback from an unknown source. I recorded one, played it back, and that's when things started changing in here. The room felt warmer, then colder. Time slowed, then snapped forward. I forgot what I was saying halfway through a sentence, not from fatigue, but like someone rewrote the moment. The towers aren't just transmitting anymore. They're receiving, like antennas tuning to a signal not from Earth or even the sky, but from something deeper, something buried not beneath ground, but beneath us, one formation, near Sector 7, wrapped entirely around the dish, like a shell, like armor, like it was protecting the hardware from something. Or preserving it. Whatever's growing on our tech isn't just ice, it's a kind of awareness. And it's learning how to listen better than we ever could. The first time I noticed something was wrong with reflection, I was brushing my teeth. The mirror lagged. Just a second. A blink. But enough. At first, I blamed exhaustion, sleep deprivation. But then listeners began reporting the same thing across cities, countries, time zones. Moments where glass reflects things that aren't quite right. Blinks out of sync. Smiles that hold a beat too long. Faces that twitch before you do. Some said it was psychological decay. Others claimed electromagnetic interference, but I've felt it. I've seen it. Reality stutters, not metaphorically, literally. Like a tape skipping. Lights flicker at the wrong intervals. Digital clocks freeze for a full minute, then jump ahead to. Conversations loop back mid-word. I've caught myself saying the same sentence twice. Same tone, same rhythm, like a replay. I didn't authorize. Time is bending, or breaking, or worse, splintering into something that only resembles what we remember. I got a message 2 nights ago from a man in Helsinki. Said he walked past a storefront window and saw himself on the other side. Not his reflection, him, standing still, watching. When he blinked, the reflection didn't. It smiled. He hasn't contacted me since. I used to think the mirror showed us ourselves. Now, I think it's something else using us to look back. And maybe the static we hear, the flickers in time, the fractured glass, aren't the breakdown of reality, but the beginning of its replacement. I've come to a conclusion. It's not a theory, not a belief. It's just a knowing. Cold and quiet. We didn't send the signal. We are the signal. We were never broadcasting. We were never reaching out. We were just carrying something old. Something buried deep inside memory and metal and language and warmth. And now that the warmth is gone, now that the light has retreated, it's free to move. Maybe we were the experiment, the device, a species built like a transmitter tower, grown not for survival, but for delivery. All our science, all our faith, all our desperate cries into the void were never meant to be answered. They were instructions, programs, scripts designed to unfold once the environment was right. And now it is. The cold didn't come for us. It came through us. That's why no one could stop it. Why no model made sense, because it was never external. It was activation, like a code typed slowly into a body we never knew we were hosting. And now the signal is active, not noise, not interference, a consciousness. Distributed, listening, expanding. You can feel it in the frost on your fingertips, in the breath that catches when you speak too long into static, in the echo of your own thoughts looping back at you through a broken screen. And maybe, just maybe, that's why I'm still broadcasting. Not because I want to be heard, but because it wants to be heard through me. And if you're still listening, maybe you were never the audience. Maybe you were the receiver. If you're hearing this, then the power grid hasn't failed completely. Or maybe you're not hearing it now. Maybe it's playing back years from now in some preserved archive. Or maybe you're not someone at all. Maybe you're just something listening from the outside. Finally curious enough to tune in? It doesn't matter anymore. I've stopped trying to reach anyone specific. My voice is just residue, a trace left behind in the ash. This is not an SOS, not a beacon, not a cry for help. This is the last match struck in a dark room just to say, we were here. The collapse wasn't sudden, not like in the movies, no single day of disaster, just a slow unraveling, a thread pulled again and again, until the whole thing came apart in silence. And in that silence, people changed. Some disappeared, some took their own lives, others, like me, just kept talking. Because maybe the only way to stay sane was to pretend someone else was still listening. I watched the frequencies die, one by one. Stations I used to check every morning, gone, just static. Or worse, not even static. Just a kind of nothing that made you feel like the universe had already forgotten how to hum. But I kept transmitting. Not out of hope, out of habit. You'd be amazed what you can hold on to when everything else is gone. A cup of warm water, the sound of your own breath, a paper map with smeared ink, a name whispered to no one, just to keep it alive. There was a woman who used to respond to my broadcasts. She called herself Orchid, said her voice was breaking, but her mind was still clear. We traded words for a few days. Then, silence. I still listen at 2 a.m. just in case she finds her way back through the frost. Maybe this isn't the last transmission. Maybe this is the last human one. And if whatever's out there is still listening, whatever's wearing our atmosphere, like a shell, walking in our signals like footsteps, this is what you took from us. This is what we couldn't carry forward. But I can still say it. We were here. Before all of this, before the frost crawled down from the sky and made everything feel hollow, there was life. Not perfect, not fair, but warm. I don't know why that's the part I remember most. Not the politics, not the noise, but the warmth. The way sunlight used to feel on the back of your neck. The way trees looked when they swayed. Not in fear, but in rhythm. Like the earth was breathing, and we were part of the inhale. There were children once. I remember that. Not just mine, others. Laughing in the streets, chalk drawings on sidewalks, sprinting through sprinklers in late July. Their joy wasn't complicated. It didn't need explanation. We had music, radios playing in kitchens, songs that didn't matter but made dishes easier to wash. You don't realize how much of memory lives in sound until it's gone. There was rain, the real kind. Not ice shards or silence, but rain that tapped gently on rooftops, rolled down window panes, and smelled like earth and ozone and second chances. There were conversations without fear, arguments over nothing, jokes that didn't need survival to be funny. There were hugs. Do you remember those? The real ones. Not the panicked, stilted kind we clung to near the end, but full-bodied ones. The kind that made time feel slower, safer. We built things, not just towers or machines, but moments. Birthdays, reunions, meals shared in loud rooms. We had names, we had voices, we had each other, and somewhere deep inside this static, pieces of that world still exist, in tone, in rhythm, in the half syllables of a signal stutter. If you know how to listen, not just hear, but listen, you can still find them. Flickers, flashes, the ghosts of joy encoded in electricity. I hold on to them, not because they'll return, but because they prove we were. The generator's coughing now, not loud, just soft hiccups in the hum, barely audible over the static. But I know what it means. The end of the current, the end of this voice. I don't have much time left. So I'll say this while I still can. Time doesn't move like it used to. It doesn't march or gallop. It drifts, slips sideways, pools in corners of memory like melted frost. There are days I wake up and swear it's still the first week of the collapse. Other times I speak for hours and realize the sun never rose. Not even a hint of gray on the horizon. Just black, eternal, and silence. Not just the absence of noise. A deeper kind of hush. Like the world is waiting for something, not to begin, but to be remembered. That's what it feels like now. Like the universe forgot we were here, and we're whispering to jog its memory. I don't think the sun is coming back. I don't think heat will return. I think this is what we are now. Flickers in a long freeze. echoes etched into frozen airwaves. But even in the dark, even here, there's a sliver of something. Not hope, not really, just witness. The fact that I'm still speaking means the end hasn't fully won. I've tried to be honest. I've tried to tell it straight. Not because the truth will save us, but because lies already didn't. So if you're listening, remember one thing. We didn't go quietly. We filled the silence with memory, with meaning, with signal, even if we were the only ones to ever hear it, even if it was never meant for us at all. The hum deepens. Right now, this second, I feel it shift beneath the static, a pressure behind the silence, like something enormous just leaned closer. The air is heavier. The tone has changed. It's not the generator. It's not me. Something is coming through. It started as distortion, small ripples in the background noise. I almost didn't notice. But then I heard the delay, a half beat between my words and the static's reply. Like it was mimicking, and then the mimicry stopped, and something else began. A voice. No accent, no language I could identify, but not random, not noise. It came through my headphones like a whisper or too big for the space it was in, compressing itself to fit inside me. It only said 3 words. We hear you. I said nothing. I couldn't. The voice wasn't mechanical. It wasn't human either. But it was close enough to trick the ear, close enough to slide between understanding and instinct. It knew how to shape sound in ways that would make my bones listen. I don't know if it was answering me or all of us. I don't know if it means salvation or confirmation. Maybe that was the point all along. We kept broadcasting, hoping for rescue, for recognition. But maybe we were never calling for anything. Maybe we were summoning. Maybe the silence was always a test, a space to see what kind of sound we'd make when left alone. Maybe this voice is what silence becomes. Once it has learned enough. My hands are shaking now. The static has cleared. The cold doesn't feel like cold anymore. It feels like something awake. I don't know if I'll speak again after this. But if you're still out there, whoever or whatever you are, this was our voice. This was our broadcast. And now it's yours. So if you're still listening, if the frequency held, if your hands are still warm enough to feel the dial, then I need to ask you something. What do you think we became in the end? Messengers? Mistakes? Or was the silence always meant to answer itself? We sent out memories, not miracles. Not to be saved, just to be known. And maybe that's all survival ever was. I don't know if these words will outlast the ice, or if they'll be buried under the hum of something else entirely. But if this voice found you, then you're a part of the signal now too. You carried it forward. You made sure we weren't forgotten. So tell me, what would you say if this was your last broadcast? Write it in the comments. One sentence, one thought, one memory, something worth keeping. And if the static ever returns, remember this voice. Remember that we tried, that we spoke, that we chose to be remembered. If this resonated, subscribe for more transmissions like this. Share the signal with someone you love, because memories deserve to be shared, not lost. This has been the last broadcast, or maybe the first reply. Stay warm, stay awake, stay listening. End of transmission.